Welcome, my friends. I'm so excited to be back with you today. And this is going to be an extra special episode because I'm going to dive back into magic, really. My conversation with my dear friend Varla the other day kind of got me thinking about magic in general and how it might be nice to spend some time helping you out with magic and just focusing on it in general. So today I'm going to cover what magic is, where you can find it, who else is talking about it, and why, and in many ways, how you already have much more access to it than you think, both inside you and around you. And so to begin, I want to reflect first a little bit on my episode with Varla. She talked about so many enchanting things, and really that's what her books are about. Magic, magical creatures, fairies, banshees, vampires, all these things that we love to see in stories that have blown up in stories, yet we struggle to believe in real life. Now, I'm not suggesting that there's a vampire behind the tree at your house or, that there's a banshee outside your window. I hope there isn't, for your sake. But I do believe that these things can be very real, but I want to just more focus on the concept of magic in general. And to begin that conversation, I want to refer back to something I said to Varla. I said to her that one of the reasons that I loved her books so much and the magic in them is that it reminded me of the divinity in me. And by divinity, I mean the divine. I mean things that are typically associated with gods, with, superhuman folk, with supernatural folk, and I meant it when I said to her that her books reminded me of my own divinity and kind of helped me to want to believe in magic again. And when it comes to, the concept of what magic is and where to find it, you can look at the simple dictionary definition, right? And if you look that up, magic is going to be defined as the power of apparently influencing the course of events using mysterious or supernatural forces, or somebody who has supernatural powers. Now, I think as human beings, we often think of ourselves as weak, right? And I say that because we come up against a lion and with our bare hands, and chances are we're probably going to lose, right? We're fairly tiny when it comes to the animal kingdom and the world itself. We look at ourselves and we think, we really don't have a whole lot of strength, sharp teeth, speed, all that stuff. And so it's easy to kind of look at us and go, yeah, when it comes to the physical, not super impressive. But recently, I saw some magic and learned about some magic that kind of made me think twice about the magic that human beings, already possess. And when it comes to these four categories, just to clarify, where to find it, magic, how it already exists within us, who's talking about it, I'm kind of going to combine those all in one by sharing a few different stories. So just to help you follow a little bit, I'm going to be talking about all those things at once, just to clarify that a little bit. So David Blaine is who I want to focus on first. And he is a very well-known magician, illusionist. And believe it or not, although I think he's in his early 50s, I only just recently heard of him. And I heard of him because Jay Shetty recently interviewed him on his podcast. I haven't listened to that podcast yet, but it was posted recently. And I was flipping through Hulu with my husband the other night before bed looking at things to watch, and I saw this show called Do Not Attempt by David Blaine, and I thought, oh, that's that guy Jay Shetty just interviewed. What's this about? His name had come up a couple times, and generally if something keeps coming back to my attention, I believe it's something that the universe wants me to take a look at, and so I try to listen. And of course, my husband heard of him before. He's heard of quite a few more people than I have. He knows a lot about at least entertainers and who's out there. And David Blaine, like I said, is a well-known magician and illusionist, often well known for putting his body through really intense things, like he was frozen in a block of ice for 63 hours. And through meditative practices, and just building up that endurance and training, he can do these superhuman things that several of us, have maybe never even attempted. He knows how to just eat glass, like literally eat glass. Another thing I saw him do is to jump from incredible heights and land and be okay. Occasionally he gets injured. Of course you're going to, but he can do all of these really fascinating things. I think he held his breath for 7 minutes, maybe a little bit over 7 minutes. And again, I hadn't known about him before. But I decided that I wanted to watch this Hulu special, Do Not Attempt, because the advertisement for it showed a picture of David Blaine kissing a king cobra. King cobras are terrifying, right? They're one of the most dangerous predators out there, and especially since I live in an area where we don't have them, that makes them actually that much creepier, because it's like this thing that is almost more imagined than it is real for me, and imagination is a powerful thing. But the king cobra is very real. And so as I watched this special with David Blaine, I saw two things that really stood out to me. Speaking of magic. And one of them, to dive into the King Cobra episode, was, David Blaine went to Indonesia as well as Thailand, but specifically in Indonesia, he met this man who was a well-known, if you want to call him snake charmer, you could, but he didn't play the flute or anything like that. What he did is he uses his foot to sort of I don't want to say hypnotize, because I'm not sure that's the right word, but it's something similar to hypnosis, where he shakes his foot kind of back and forth on the ground, like a clock ticking, with the cobra, and kind of gets it to watch this movement, and it's as if it puts it in a calm state. And he doesn't explain why he's doing this. If I don't know the reason, but something about this foot movement is putting the cobra into a trance. And what this charmer or, snake spiritualist is communicated is that when people are playing flutes, to charm snakes, the snakes aren't necessarily listening to the music. They're watching the movement of the person playing the flute. So it's all about movement. And the snake charmer would basically have this spiritual connection with the king cobra. He would pull it out of this box and do these movements with his feet and just kind of lock eyes with it. And he told David Blaine, who's there observing the whole thing so he can learn from this man, that he has a spiritual connection with the snake. It's almost like this telepathic thing. And he trained David Blaine how to get into a situation where he could kiss a king cobra on top of its head. Now, based on the education of the episode, which you should totally go watch on Hulu, again, What to Expect, David Blaine, what you learn is that it's very much a spiritual connection. It's about the energy that's passed between the two. And if you listen to even some of my favorites, Ed Milet, going from snake charmers to entrepreneurs, they talk about energy, the connection that we have to what's around us. And basically that's what's happening with the snake charmer, is this transference of energy that builds this connection with the snake to the point where he could kiss a king cobra on the head. Now, there's a lot of trust and vulnerability involved in this kind of relationship, right? Because a king cobra, in case you don't know, it bites you, you're dead. And the thing is, in this man's home country of Indonesia, there is no anti-venom. They don't make anti-venom for king cobras there. I think you have to go to another country, I forget which one it is, to get that anti-venom. So every time he interacts with this snake, it is an extremely vulnerable thing, and he's putting his trust in this snake, to not bite him. Now, let me say, this is an extremely, professional thing. Nobody should just go out there and do this with a snake, but this man has had years of training and spiritual, kind of connection that he's built with the snake. And he taught David Blaine how to do it. And sure enough, it's not really a spoiler because it's right there on the ad, David Blaine learns how to kiss a king cobra on the head. Another thing that I saw David Blaine do in this series is learn to free dive, ice dive. If you don't know what free diving is, it's just what it sounds like. You don't have oxygen, you don't have the scuba gear, you're diving deep, in the ocean, in the sea, and it's an extreme sport. But David Blaine specifically free dives in ice cold, frigid Arctic waters, and he does so in his shorts and his t-shirt. He does so in his shorts and his t-shirt. and even chooses not to wear a mask, which the professional ice free divers recommended because of what the cold temperatures can do to your eyes. But he said, nope, I'm going for it. And again, this was after several days of training with these professionals. But he did it. He swam under the ice, okay? Like under the ice. And then I forget, I don't want to say the incorrect distance, but it was quite a distance. Free diving, swimming under the ice, and then in this area where the ice had thinned a little bit, but was still very much there, punched through it and emerged on the other side. There is so much mind, body, meditation, magic, I'm going to call it that because it is involved in doing something like this. To be able to train your mind to find peace with a king cobra, to the point where you can kiss it, to swim under frigid temperatures that would normally kill someone and then punch your way through the ice and emerge on the other side and just start breathing. That is magic. That is amazing. And a human being did that. A human being trained his mind and body to be at peace with the king cobra, to build a relationship with the king cobra to the point where he could kiss it, to swim without any kind of oxygen under the ice for a very long distance and then punch out of it. It's done through meditation. It's done through getting to a state where you can kind of tell your body what to do and what to endure. You can do these superhuman things. I call that magic. I call that connecting with the divine. And, you can read stories of monks and people who spend so much time training their minds that they can also do these seemingly superhuman things. Now, that brings me back to this connection of divinity, right? We often think of ourselves as weak, but I think we have no idea what we're actually capable of, given the right training, mindset, and goals. Now, I'm not suggesting that we all go out there and start kissing venomous snakes or put ourselves in life-threatening situations, but I want to focus on the magic of the situation, of allowing yourself just the possibility to see what you can do when you really get to know yourself and your inner divinity, because that's what I thought as I was watching David Blaine and these remarkable people on this special is I don't necessarily want to go kiss a king cobra, or you know me, I hate the cold. I don't want to go swim in the ice. But what I learned is it's like, okay, if David Blaine and all of these remarkable people on this special can teach themselves to do this, what could I teach myself to do? And the answer to finding that kind of magic goes back to what I always suggest you to listen to yourself. Spend some quiet time alone. See where your heart is leading you. See what your mind is capable of. And there's all kinds of meditative practices, right? You can download the Calm app. You could, start listening to Jay Shetty's On Purpose podcast too. He sometimes does meditations right on there. I mean, you can find meditations in so many places. Start there. Start meditating. Start getting in touch with your mind. I know that Dr. Joe Dispenza also does so much and ties it to like neuroscience, with meditation and what the body can teach itself to do with healing and things like that. So definitely check out his work. And I think a major step towards discovering our own divinity is seeing what our minds are capable of when we're focused. I would argue that all of these successful people out there, one of the reasons why they're successful is they started just taking themselves seriously. They started to believe that they could do the things that they imagined that they could do. It started with getting to know themselves better by giving themselves that quiet space to just listen. So I encourage you to do that. I think that's the first step towards actual magic, is getting to know your own mind and seeing where it leads you. And take time to pay attention to inspirational people. I think we have a lot of gossip radio out there and things like that, which is good for a temporary dopamine hit, but it doesn't really inspire you much. If anything, at least it did with me, gossip radio kind of starts making me feel insecure about oh, well, who's cheating on me, or, who's talking about me. If anything, it kind of inspires some of that paranoia, I think. So take time to listen to remarkable people. Jay Shetty's On Purpose podcast is a great way to get access to a lot of those folks because he's interviewing remarkable people every week. Or just, start reading about it. There's all kinds of memoirs and biographies out there about people who've done amazing things. Start reading about the magic that they've created, and it will, inspire you to want to find out what you are capable of creating. So that's one very real way that I believe that magic exists, and that is in our minds. That is in the capability of our human brain and what we can teach our bodies to do. It's really, really amazing. Another place that magic exists, okay, because if we think about my episode with Varla Ventura, she's talking about fairy rings and things like that. I fully believe that they're real. Varla introduced me to some of Richard Estep's work, and Jeff, what's his name? I got to look it up because I forgot. Bellinger, is that right? Yeah, okay, I was right. Jeff Bellinger. These are nonfiction writers who go out and explore stories of the paranormal, right? You can find, in cryptids and things like that. And so there's all kinds of writers out there who investigate remarkable things, magical creatures, whether it be fairies, ghosts, Bigfoot, all that stuff. And I would argue that all of it is real. If you look into some Native American lore and the 7 grandfather teachings, I've probably brought this up before. I think I have, but I'm going to refer to it again. Bigfoot, or what they called Kichisabe, at least in the Midwest area where I'm from, that was a very real creature. That's a part of their teachings, just as much as the gray wolf is, the bald eagle, and the bear. It was grouped along with all of these teachings, and so I am led to believe that they saw it. They saw this Bigfoot creature, this Kichisabe, often enough that it became a part of the teachings that they used. I believe it was very real once, and I believe that just like fairies, and these other creatures, it has the ability to travel in multiple dimensions. You can even watch, if you want to get a little creepier, the Unsolved Mysteries, that Netflix special, Unsolved Mysteries. You can watch that and see an episode about the Mothman, which is terrifying, but it's basically this winged creature with red eyes that appears out of nowhere and then is gone out of nowhere. And people have seen it. So you can do all this research and see all these stories about these creatures that once existed or people still have sightings of. And eventually you get to a point where it's like, okay, there's enough of these stories out there that some of this has got to be real. And just as you might believe that when your loved ones die, they go to heaven or they are still around you, I think it's a similar concept. I think that the planes, right, the spiritual planes, or people crossing over, I think these other spiritual planes are much closer than we think. We just can't see it with our naked eye. So just as many of us believe our loved ones are still with us, I believe these magical creatures are with us. And there's enough stories and sightings out there of these creatures that it's like some of this has got to be real. There's too many stories out there of certain sightings and senses that people had for it not to be real. Now, my personal belief is they go between dimensions. I think that's what happened to Bigfoot or Kichisabe. I think it has the ability to come into our, earthly dimension and go into the spiritual dimension. And if you look at, specifically Ojibwe lore, they talk about how the Kichisabe or the Bigfoot creature is more closely connected to the spiritual realm than it is the earthly realm. So I believe that it chooses, when it wants to come into the earthly realm and reveal itself. But I think a lot of these things are much closer than we think. And I think a reason why many of them have disappeared is because many of us in so many cultures have lost connections with ourselves, right? We've lost connections with the magical, especially in the Western world where things have become very materialistic. We look to pill bottles for cures. And by no means am I saying don't take medication, take the medication that you need. But if you remember what Varla said, she said much medicine is rooted in plants. A lot of the science is now catching up and referring to ancient things, connection to the earth as medicine, and that in itself is magic too. That medicine can grow from the ground, that we can harvest it. I think a big reason why we don't see magical creatures is because we are just really out of touch with ourselves and with the magical, because especially in this technology boom, right, where so many of us are sucked into screens, we're just not open to it. We're not receptive to it. But I can tell you something. Once I kind of started meditating more and reading more about my psychic abilities, things sure as hell opened up to me quite a bit. And I'm talking about everything from, like, I've taken pictures, and of like the water or of the moon. And there have been things appearing in my pictures, things that quite honestly look like spirits. And I've shown a few people and it's like, yeah, that looks like something otherworldly, and it wasn't even what I was taking a picture of, but it appeared. I've had more vivid dreams that I believe are leading me down, the path that I was meant to be on. I've been able to communicate with my ancestors more and be more open to their message. And none of this stuff is leading me down a crazy path, right? Where I want to start a cult or where I want to cast spells on people or anything like that. It's not doing that. What it's doing is it's making me want to heal myself more and help heal the world more. It's breeding more compassion. And so I think sometimes there's a stereotype out there that if you start opening yourself up to the possibility of magic, that it might kind of turn you crazy or turn you evil. And I'm here to tell you, it does not do that. If you have the intention of opening so that you can be more connected and so that you can help the world to heal and to be more connected to themselves and the earth around them, those intentions follow. But it goes so much deeper than just, things appearing in pictures or a fairy book coming to my door. It goes to a place of magic is everywhere. And some of recognizing it is just realizing that the everyday things we see are actually rather extraordinary. And I'm talking about everything from the tree outside your house, right? If you have a tall tree around you somewhere, it's been there for hundreds of years, decades, and it's survived. It's survived all the elements. It's survived industrialization. It's survived woodpeckers potentially. Oh my God, there's so many woodpeckers around my house. It's bad. That in itself is magic. That a natural element can grow and thrive despite the chaos around it. And that's a lesson for us too, right? Rick Rubin writes in his book, The Creative Act, A Way of Being, that human beings are like the ocean. And that if you just sit and look at it for a while, you'll start to see similarities. There are so many beautiful lessons about human beings and our connection to nature. And the more that we see our connection to nature around us, the more we see our own divine capability. So I believe that magic exists in the things right outside our window. And the lesson about the tree growing despite the chaos, the teacher in me hopes that, that metaphor is obvious. But just in case it's not, it's like watching a tree that can grow and thrive and survive the elements and become itself, grow tall with strong roots despite the chaos around it. Well, maybe if the tree can do it, I can do it too, right? Maybe I can become something remarkable even in the difficult circumstances that surround me. If I believe that I'm like the ocean, wow, the ocean is a vast thing. It is a magical thing. It is a thing that's maybe been polluted, right, or misused and abused, yet it continues to hold so much life that humans haven't even discovered yet. Well, if I start believing that I could be like that ocean, maybe I realize that I can do life-changing things, that I carry remarkable life inside me despite those who've tried to use and abuse me. I'm the ocean. I am vast. When we start seeing our connection to the things that are around us, life becomes remarkable. Life becomes magical. So I would encourage you to take a second look at the environment around you. And I'm mostly talking about outside. Even if you live in the middle of a city, I can guarantee you there's a flower growing somewhere there that you wouldn't expect to see. I can guarantee you there's probably a butterfly flying around that you didn't expect to see, despite the industrialization around it. I think there's so much more magic around us that we've kind of just overlooked or dismissed because we're super distracted. But I can also promise you that the more that you take time to notice these things, the more at peace you will be. And you'll be at peace because it gives you hope. When you see things growing and thriving despite difficult circumstances, it gives you hope. But it also just helps you connect with peace, you know? Instead of scrolling on your phone, you're sitting by a tree and you're breathing. You're taking in that oxygen. That is magic. And that wakes you up to the magic inside you. And so I want to just encourage you to do that today. And since I'm kind of going in the direction of healing, I want to talk about Andrea Gibson. They were the poet that I referenced in my gender episode. And in their book, You Better Be Lightning, they have a few poems about being sexually assaulted as a child. And, well, like preteen, which is still extremely messed up. And then after they wrote these longer poems about just what that experience was like, they have a short poem called What Can't Be Taken that I want to read to you really quickly because I think there's a lot of magic in this poem too. And what it says is, trauma was not being able to get the hands of the clock off me. Healing was learning that no one has ever laid a fingerprint on the part of me that's infinite. I'm going to read that one more time. Healing was learning that no one has ever laid a fingerprint on the part of me that's infinite. God, that's beautiful. And again, that's Andrea Gibson from their book, You Better Be Lightning. I would like to believe that the human beings who've overcome some of the most traumatic things, whether that be abuse, or even if you look back at the folks who fought against slavery and segregation, sexism, all of the horrible things that human beings have tried to do to each other. When you look at the folks who've overcome that, I believe that they understood exactly what Andrea Gibson was talking about. Healing is learning that no one has ever laid a fingerprint on the part of me that's infinite. I believe the folks who've overcome remarkable things realize that no matter how much somebody abused their body, there was an infinite part of them that could never be touched, that could rise higher. Now, please don't misunderstand me. People's bodies should not be used and abused, but unfortunately they have been. But I think the folks that were willing to stand up and fight knew that part of themselves that said, no, there's something deeper here that you can't touch and you never will touch. And you never have. And I'm going to fight for circumstances where you can't touch or abuse my body either. Because to an extent, I can understand what Andrea Gibson meant by that. Because unfortunately, like many women, I have been sexually assaulted, not just once, but multiple times. And I can understand what Andrea Gibson meant because I know what it feels like to rise above, to know that you deserve better, to have this divine part of you that nobody who's molested your body has ever been able to grasp or hold. They can't. And eventually I got to circumstances where, I wasn't allowing anybody to abuse me in that way anymore. So it's a really deep concept, but it's one that's worth listening or worth spending some time with. Healing is learning that nobody has ever laid a finger on the part of me that's infinite. That speaks to magic. That speaks to human beings recognizing that they are, in fact, divine. That there is an energy to us that never dies and is very much alive right now, in these bodies that our souls chose. And when you start to believe, and this is where I kind of, like I said, have an issue with Christianity and some religions that tell you to seek validation and perfection outside of yourself. Where I have an issue with that is I think it sort of cauterizes or blocks you from the part of yourself that is divine. It blocks you from reaching your full potential because you think you don't have it in you. Human beings are rather divine. If you don't believe me, watch Do Not Attempt with David Blaine. See these remarkable people kissing king cobras. Watch David Blaine swim under the ice and then break through it with his fist while wearing shorts and a t-shirt. That's remarkable. He trained his mind and his body to do that. He got in touch with the infinite part of his soul. I believe that magic exists all around us and inside us. And so for the final takeaways of this episode, like if you're just interested in learning more about magic, I encourage you again to learn about meditation, listen to Jay Shetty's On Purpose podcast, seek out the meditations on the Calm app, or you can sometimes get some for free on YouTube. I don't know, you're maybe more at risk on YouTube of coming across one that might not be legit, but there's several that are legit out there. But the Calm app, for sure, you're going to come across some good ones because that's professionally managed, right? Another thing I would encourage you to do is start seeking out remarkable stories, because the more, Ed Milet talks a lot about your reticular activating system in his books and on his podcast. And what that means is what you train your mind to look for, you will see. And so the more that you read remarkable stories and listen to remarkable stories, the more that you will train your brain to look for the remarkable. And I can attest to that. The more that I have, listened to interviews with remarkable people on podcasts, read stories about remarkable people like Les Brown, like Ed Milet, like Brene Brown, like Michelle Obama. The more that I've read stories about these remarkable people, the more I have seen the remarkable in my daily life, and the more that I believed I could be remarkable. And even in terms of these pictures of like spirits that I'm seeing, and it's not about oh my God, that's crazy, and putting it away. It's not about, oh, look at this. It's like, oh, I am surrounded maybe by more divine spirits than I realized. There are real light forces around me. And I think they're showing up in these pictures. So that's what it did for me. Like even something as simple as thinking I saw a spirit in my photo. What that did is it told me, hey, these light creatures are with me. These supportive angelic forces are with me, even though I can't see them with my naked eye. So start seeking out the remarkable, because the more you read about it, the more you listen to it, the more you'll see it in your own life, and the more you will believe that you are capable of it. So seek that out. And then on that note, start seeing what is around you already as remarkable. Take time with nature, and guess what? The neuroscience supports that. You can go and look at that information. You can go and look at the research they're doing out there. I think what it is right now is 60 minutes of like, you're not listening to any music, no podcast. 60 minutes in nature will do wonders for your mental health. And I mean like alone in nature, but 60 minutes isn't always realistic for all of us. It's certainly not for me, right? Like I have a billion children, but I can tell you even 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes will do wonders for your mental health. And there's a lot of the remarkable in nature. So look around you, see what's around you, start noticing things. Notice the butterfly. Notice the birds singing. Notice the flower growing in the middle of the sidewalk. Notice the tree that's still standing. All of that is magical, and all of it will do wonders for your mental health. All of it will help you to believe in yourself. And once you believe that you, might possess some healing powers, that you might be remarkable, you will be amazed at what you can put out there in the world. So see the remarkable around you. Start seeking some of these stories. Richard Estep's work, Jeff Bellinger's work, with the supernatural and ghosts. And, Richard Estep in general wrote about magic in the Shadow Zine that I bought. Varla Ventura was talking about those. You can go to the Shadow Zine website and order them. And again, it's run by Jeff Bellinger, so that's what you're going to want to work for. But Richard Estep's Shadow Zine, The Ghosts and Monsters of Cornwall, he talks quite a bit about magic in that episode, in that issue, and the transference of magic. And so start seeking out these stories, start reading about these remarkable things that people are seeing. And it doesn't mean you have to believe in all of it, but you might. And you might find that once you do start believing in it, life becomes remarkable. I am so grateful for you and your time today, and I hope that my words encouraged you to find some magic in yourself. Find the magic around you. Look for remarkable stories. It will raise you up, especially in times of turmoil and seeming darkness. There's even with all of this, there are remarkable things around you, and I can't encourage you enough to go find it. But this is a good start. You're here. You're listening to the magic in me. And as always, I cannot thank you enough for coming.